It's that time of year to start looking at your pond so you can enjoy it all summer long. I'm with Eamonn Hughes from Hughes Water Gardens, and Eamonn, really we should be looking at getting these ponds ready for us because we want to be out on our decks and enjoying them and being in our gardens.
Yeah, we really have to look at your pond. Hopefully people have gone and trimmed up all their debris out of the pond, but if they haven't done that, it's really important to do it this spring, because what will happen is all of that dead foliage off the plants will rot back into the water and set up a whole cycle with a lot of algae for them. So go in, trim off any dead leaves that are still in there. If there are leaves off trees and that on the bottom of the pond, just gently scoop them out with a net and get as much debris out of it first, so you can help stop the algae forming.
Oh, that totally makes sense. So really that takes a lot out right there. And then what's the next step?
Well, what will happen is you'll still get algae, and that's the biggest question we get from people coming in the spring is, help, I've got string algae everywhere. So there's a couple of different forms of algae. One is a pea green algae, the water turns green, and that's not very common. That's a really high nutrient load, and it rarely happens in our area. Most of our problems is long stringy algae. And the best thing to do with that initially is just get a small garden rake, coil it around the rake and take it out. Because if you come here and buy some treatments for it, all you're doing when it dies is the nutrient goes back in the water, the spores are in the air all the time, it'll start growing again. So the first thing to do is remove as much as you can and then do a treatment. And there are many treatments here we can do. This is one called Green Clean FX, another one called Algae Fix. And these basically disrupt the cell walls of the algae and kill them. So that's one way of doing it. And the second is putting in a product like this, which is it has microbes in it, bacteria, beneficial bacteria, which break down the nutrient, and then it's not available to the algae to grow. So it is important to do some of the microbe lift with, this particular one has a sludge away enzyme in it, which breaks down all of the sludge on the bottom of your pond.
So really, it's really getting rid of all that debris that shouldn't be there at all. That is wonderful. So once we clean up the water, is there a way to really kind of keep it crystal clean or as clean as possible during the year?
Well, a lot depends on what you have in your pond. If you have a very large fish load, if you have a lot of fish in your pond, maybe a little overstocked, they had babies and then grandchildren, so you've got a lot of fish in there, and you start feeding them heavily, that's got to go somewhere. The poop comes out, and that gives again nutrient for it. So you may have to get into a filter situation where you're doing some biological filtration on the side, where you take the water out as part of your waterfall flow through the filter and back into the pond.
So it's all about balance.
It's all about balance, getting that balance, and the balance of fish, the amount of fish you have in there should be correct to the volume of the water you have. The other thing you can do as well, the other thing that will lock up a lot of that nutrient are the plants. So it's important to have as many plants as you can in there, because that will take in that nutrient and use as foliage and flowers.
And it makes them more pretty, so really, and it's the place to come see all the plants you have here.
So one of the other things we do have to watch as well, sometimes with mosquitoes, people get worried about mosquitoes. And typically if you have fish in your pond, they're going to eat the larvae. But if not, if you don't have fish in your pond and just plants, then something like this simple dunk, it's one little donut, you place that in, it lasts 3 months.
Excellent.
And it releases a bacteria that kills only mosquito. It's specific just to mosquito. So it's safe for pets and everything else.
All right, and then I see you have some of these kind of barley filters or kind of floats, and so does this help absorb some of the algae too?
No one really knows the full chemistry behind why barley works, but it does, but it's a long-term process. You have to put it in early in the spring, and as the barley decays, it releases certain organisms in there that prevents the algae growing.
Perfect, wow.
So, but you know, the thing is, you've got something big like this floating in your pond, so whether you want that or not. But some people like the sort of the natural biological way of doing it, rather than going with a chemical to do it.
And then also feeding our plants. We have some lilies in there, or some of our plants from last year. Is it time to start feeding them?
We're saying on one hand here, let it take the nutrient out, but they won't get enough from the water. They won't get a balanced nutrient from it. So it is important that you feed them. These are little tablets. So all you've got to do is stick one of these right down into the plant
soil.
with a lily, 3 to 5 every probably 6 weeks, and they'll really reward you with much better flowering.
Heavy feeders.
Well, lilies in particular are, because they're forming leaves the whole time, and flowers the whole
Sure.
time.
Yeah, they're working.
And as those flowers, lilies grow from the center out, and then you'll see a little yellowing on the outer leaves. Just cut those off, more leaves will come.
Sure.
So don't let them rot down into the water, that's
Right.
important.
Like any other plant in the garden, you have to kind of trim them once in a while.
You do, yeah.
And then what about fish? Is it time to start feeding them?
What happens is during the winter, as fish are feeding off their fat reserves, they cannot digest food. They lack the enzymes to it. So some people kill their fish by feeding too early with some food from the previous summer. It's really important in the spring to feed with wheat germ, and that they're able to digest that and they'll be fine. So once water temperature gets above 50 degrees, start them on their wheat germ. It's normally sold as spring fall food.
Okay.
So you do that with them, and then once the temperature gets up to 58, 60, then you can transition to your higher protein food for the summer. But really important in the spring and the fall to be just doing wheat germ for them.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we all love our ponds and our gardens. They're so wonderful to watch all the season long. And so if you have any other questions, go to gardentime.tv. We'll click you over to their website, and there's classes, other information on the website, or stop out and talk to the staff. They have lots of information for you. Thanks so much.
Oh, thanks so much, Judy.